Earlier today, a signal vanished, not from a battlefield in Donetsk or a trench in Zaporizhia, but from deep inside Russia itself, from an airfield near Lipetsk, over 400 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Two signals, to be precise. The electronic pulses of two Russian Su-30 fighter jets, multi-role hunters worth tens of millions of dollars each. One moment, they were a dormant threat on a tarmac. The next, according to Ukraine's military intelligence, they were burning husks. Not taken out by a $1 million missile, but by saboteurs who, they claim, walked in, planted explosives, and walked out unhindered. This was not an accident. It was not luck. This, right now, is a targeted campaign of elimination, and it asks a single brutal question that Moscow does not want you to consider. Is the Russian Air Force, at least in the crucial Black Sea theater, slowly being driven into extinction? Before we dive into the secret data painting this grim picture for the Kremlin, hit that like button right now. The YouTube algorithm is a battlefield of its own. Your likes are our air support. They push this vital analysis to the front lines of more people's feeds, helping to cut through the fog of war. Subscribe and hit the bell to join the intelligence briefing. We're going deep, and you won't want to miss what's coming. Let's rewind the clock. Just this month of December 2025, the pattern emerges. A pattern of precise, systematic erosion, the Lipetsk strike on December 21st, a daring ground operation in Russia's west. That same night, over 1,000 kilometers south in occupied Crimea, long-range drones streak into the Belbek airfield. The Ukrainian Security Service, the SBU, releases footage. Two Su-27 flankers are hit. One, they state, was on the runway, with a full combat load and ready for combat flight. It was destroyed before it could ever get airborne. But here's the critical tactical insight. Belbek was hit twice in days. The first strike on December 18th wasn't aimed at planes. It targeted the eyes and the shield of the base, the radar, and an air defense system. They took out the guard, then returned to execute the prisoner. This is sophisticated, sequenced targeting. This is the mind of a chess player, not a brawler. Go back a little further. Early December, the Saki airfield in Crimea. A strike destroys a Russian Su-24 Fencer, that classic Soviet-era bomber workhorse. Analyst David Axe, writing in his Trench Art blog, looked at the cumulative damage and dropped a chilling term: extinction. He wrote, Ukrainian missiles and drones are driving the Russian Navy's Black Sea fighter and bomber regiment into extinction. Extinction. That's the word of a professional analyst, not a propaganda headline. And at roughly the same time at Katya Airfield, another 20 miles south, a MiG-29 reportedly taken out in what appears to be another sabotage op. Ground agents inside the wire. Add to this the sea drone attack on a Kilo-class attack submarine in Novorossiysk, a vessel specifically used to launch Kalibr cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities. The SBU claims it suffered critical damage. We are not looking at random, opportunistic hits. We are looking at a target set: fighter jets, bombers, submarines, and the oil terminal in Krasnodar that fuels them. This is a coordinated strategy. But why this strategy? And why now? To understand the why, you need to hear the words of the Ukrainian president just this past Monday, December 22nd. Volodymyr Zelensky stood before his people and issued a Christmas warning. He said the military was on high alert for December 23rd through the 25th. And then he laid bare the terrifying reality. Everything is very difficult because there is, unfortunately, a shortage of air defense systems. Let that sink in. A shortage of air defense. Missiles and Iranian-designed Shahed drones are raining down on cities, on the power grid, on civilians, and the protective shield is full of holes. So what do you do when you can't stop the arrows in the sky? You find the archers. You burn their quivers. You burn their camps. You cannot intercept every Kh-101 cruise missile launched from a Tu-95 Bear bomber over the Caspian Sea. It's almost impossible to stop every Kalibr launched from a ship or submarine in the Black Sea. But you can, theoretically, destroy the launch platform itself, or NIU, while it's still on the ground, or in the port. You shift from a defensive, reactive posture, trying to swat down incoming projectiles, to an offensive, preemptive one, destroying the enemy's ability to launch them in the first place. This is the core of the extinction strategy. It's a brutal, high-stakes calculus born of absolute necessity. Every Su-24 destroyed at Saki is one less aircraft to rain guided bombs on Avdiivka or Kramatorsk. Every Su-27 turned to scrap at Belbek is one less fighter bomber to penetrate Ukrainian airspace. Every Kilo-class submarine crippled in port is one less launcher for a salvo of calibers against Odessa. But is it working? Or is Ukraine, as some critics might argue, wasting precious resources on pinprick strikes against a giant that has hundreds more planes in storage? This is where we need to look at the secret data, not from intelligence agencies, but from open source. The secret data isn't in a classified CIA vault. It's on satellite imagery. It's in flight tracking data. It's in the meticulous photo-backed catalogs of open-source intelligence, OSINT communities. Take the analysts at Ishi Oryx Spionkop, perhaps the most rigorous OSINT blog tracking equipment losses in this war. Their work is simple. They only count a vehicle or aircraft as lost if there is photographic or videographic evidence. It's a conservative, undeniable record. While they track all losses, the pattern for Russian fixed-wing aircraft is telling. Each confirmed kill, a blurred satellite image of a burnt-out Hulk at Saki, a smokestack where a Su-27 once sat at Belbek, is a permanent debit from Russia's order of battle. David Axe's analysis of Saki noted the air regiment there now operates with less than half the combat planes it had in 2022. Now let's talk about the qualitative math. Russia has airframes in storage, yes, hundreds of them, but they are not all created equal. The Su-24 Fencer that was destroyed? It is a dedicated long-range strike bomber, a true workhorse, and it is out of production. Russia cannot build new ones. Every loss is irreplaceable. They can only cannibalize others or fly remaining frames into the ground. The modernized Su-27SM or Su-30SM that are being hit, they are more modern, multi-role platforms, but building them takes time, money, and a microchip supply chain that is under severe international sanctions. Replacing a sophisticated avionics suite is not like replacing a tire. Then there's the operational impact. Math. An airfield like Belbek isn't just a parking lot. It's a complex ecosystem. Destroying a radar and an air defense system doesn't just make it vulnerable for the next drone strike. It forces a complete reevaluation of base security. It scatters aircraft to other, potentially less capable bases. It overwhelms maintenance crews. It cripples pilot morale. Every pilot sleeping in a bunker at Lipetsk tonight is wondering if their jet will be there in the morning. This is the steady attrition Axe described. Death by 1,000 cuts, where each cut weakens the whole organism. But perspective is everything. So let's flip the lens. Let's assume for a moment the Kremlin's point of view. If we tune into Russian state media or read statements from the defense ministry, a different picture emerges. The dominant narrative is one of bomb resilience, scale, First, denial and minimization. The Russian MOD routinely does not comment on strikes deep inside Russia or Crimea. When it must, it claims all attacks were intercepted or that minor damage was sustained to infrastructure. The Kilo-class submarine at Novorossiysk? Satellite imagery showed it still afloat. They would argue its operational status is unproven. The jets at Lipetsk? Unconfirmed. This is the information fog of war. Second, the argument of mass. As one Russian military blogger might put it, so what? We have hundreds of aircraft. We have vast reserves. The loss of a few dozen frames over 2 years is a statistical fluctuation, not a trend. Our aviation strikes daily with impunity. Our production lines, while slowed, are still moving. A new Su-34 or Su-35 will roll out to replace the old one. Third, strategic patience. From Moscow's vantage point, Ukraine is expending immense effort, developing long-range drones, risking elite sabotage units, investing in naval drones for tactical victories. Meanwhile, Russia continues to grind forward on the land front in the east. It continues to launch massive combined drone and missile barrages that strain and penetrate Ukraine's air defenses. The war, they would argue, is won on the front lines in Bakhmut and Avdiivka, not on the tarmac in Saki. Ukraine is chasing symbolic wins while losing territory. And there is a cold, hard truth in this perspective. Russia is a continental power with a deep, though decaying, Soviet stockpile. It can absorb losses that would cripple a smaller nation. But that leads to the next critical question. Is absorption the same as effectiveness? Just because you have planes, does it mean you can use them effectively in the precise way you need to? This is where the extinction thesis becomes geographically specific and most compelling. We are not necessarily talking about the entire Russian aerospace forces across all of Russia. We are talking about a specific force in a specific theater. The naval aviation regiments of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, based primarily in Crimea. Crimea is not just occupied territory. It is Russia's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Black Sea. From bases like Belbek, Saki, and Gvardeyskoye, aircraft like the Su-24, Su-27, and Su-30 Project Power over the entire sea support ground operations in southern Ukraine and threaten shipping. But Crimea is also a Beriev. It is connected to Russia only by the fragile Kerch Bridge and a land corridor through occupied territory that is within range of HIMARS. It is surrounded by water, and for the last 2 years, it has been within the gradually expanding strike range or of Ukrainian capabilities. First, it was just the front lines. Then it was HIMARS range, 70 kilometers. Then it was Storm Shadow scalp range, 250 kilometers plus. Now, with improvised long-range drones and sabotage, nowhere in Crimea is safe. And increasingly, nowhere in Western Russia is safe either. For the Black Sea Fleet's air regiments, this creates an existential dilemma. Do they concentrate force in Crimea for operational efficiency, making themselves a target-rich environment for Ukraine's growing deep strike portfolio? Or do they disperse their aircraft to bases deeper in Russia, like Lipetsk or Morozovsk, sacrificing sortie rate, response time, and loiter time over the battlefield? Every strike like the one on Belbek pushes them toward option 2, dispersion and degradation. This is the extinction of a capability, not necessarily of every single airframe. It's the extinction of the ability to effectively use air power from Crimea as a decisive, concentrated force. It's why the Black Sea Fleet's warships had to flee Sevastopol for Novorossiysk. And now, even their submarines aren't safe there. Ukraine is making the Black Sea, and the peninsula that dominates it, a hostile environment for high-value Russian assets. But can this strategy hold? What are its limits? And what happens when Russia adapts? War is a duel of adaptation. For every action, a reaction. Ukraine's airfield extinction strategy is only viable as long as Russia fails to counter it. So, how is Russia adapting? We can infer from the strikes themselves. The fact that saboteurs allegedly penetrated Lipetsk suggests perimeter security failures. We will likely see a massive, paranoid tightening of base security across Western Russia. More guards, more patrols, more internal checks. This ties down manpower and creates a climate of fear. The repeated drone strikes on Crimea suggest that even layered air defenses, Pantsers, Tor systems, S-300s, are not foolproof against low-flying, possibly stealthy or swarm-style drones. Russia's response? They will try to jam GPS and guidance signals more effectively. They will deploy more electronic warfare assets around critical bases. They may invest in their own drone-killing systems. But here's Ukraine's counter-adaptation, hinted at in the Belbek strikes. They are striking the air defenses first. They are blinding and disarming the guard dogs before going for the treasure. This is a terrifying escalation in the drone-counter-drone duel. The technological edge is shifting to the attacker in this domain. Drones are becoming cheaper, smarter, and longer-ranged. The attack on Lipetsk, over 400 kilometers inside Russia, showcases a ground-based infiltration capability that is almost impossible to stop with traditional air defense. How do you stop a person with a backpack? The critical vulnerability for Ukraine is scale. Can they produce enough long-range drones and train enough elite sabotage teams to make this attrition truly unsustainable for Russia? Or will Russia's sheer size and its own accelerating drone production outpace the losses? This brings us to the most volatile variable of all. What is the red line? Every time a Ukrainian drone hits an oil refinery in Ryazan or an airfield in Lipetsk, it crosses a psychological and potentially political threshold that didn't exist in 2022. For years, the West cautiously supplied weapons with range limitations, fearing escalation. Ukraine has now demonstrated it can build its own reach. Strikes on Crimea were once controversial. Now, they are routine. Strikes on mainland Russia, once rare, are becoming a monthly, then weekly occurrence. The extinction campaign against the Russian Air Force pushes directly against this escalation boundary. Hitting a submarine at sea is one thing. Blowing up fighter jets on their home soil, deep inside Russia's recognized borders, is another level of provocation in the Kremlin's eyes. So far, Russia's response has been rhetorical fury and more bombardment of Ukrainian cities. But what if a strike kills a large number of Russian pilots in their barracks? What if a sabotage team is caught and linked directly to Western intelligence? What if a strike accidentally causes massive civilian casualties on Russian soil? Ukraine is gambling that Russia's desire to avoid a total mobilization or a direct, wider war with NATO outweighs its anger at these deep strikes. They are gambling that Russia will accept this steady attrition as a cost of doing business. It is an incredibly high-stakes bet, and hovering over all of this is the shadow of negotiation. Zelensky mentioned that working drafts of a peace plan are ready, developed with the U.S., but that there are certain points that Ukraine is not prepared to accept. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov called some U.S. strategic language significant steps, but said Moscow still has serious questions. Is Ukraine's airfield campaign a bid to improve its bargaining position? To show that even with an air defense shortage, it can impose an unbearable cost on Russia's key military assets? Is this the roar of a cornered lion meant to be heard at the negotiating table in Miami or wherever diplomats meet? So, let's return to our brutal opening question. Is the Russian Air Force dying? The answer is not a simple yes or no. It is a nuanced, terrifying affirmative. Is the entire Russian aerospace forces facing extinction? No. It remains one of the world's largest air powers, but is a critical component of it. The Black Sea Naval Aviation Regiments, and the forward-deployed strike aircraft used to terrorize Ukrainian cities, facing a campaign of systematic degradation that could render them combat ineffective in their primary theater? The evidence from Saki, Belbek, and Kacha suggests. Yes, Patriot. Ukraine has identified a critical asymmetry. Russia has more missiles and more planes. Ukraine has smarter targeting, interior lines, and a desperate need to change the equation. Their solution: don't fight the symptom, the incoming missile. Fight the disease, the launch platform. This is more than a tactic. It is a strategy of enforced disarmament. It is an attempt to surgically remove specific claws from the Russian bear because they cannot slay the beast outright. The secret data of satellite imagery and loss inventories shows it is working in a tactical, cumulative sense. The secret data of Russian morale and operational flexibility likely shows it is working in a psychological sense. But war is dynamic. Russia will adapt. They will harden bases, improve jamming, and likely launch their own disruptive deep strikes against Ukrainian drone production facilities. The extinction clock is ticking on both sides, one against aircraft, the other against time, resources, and Western patience. Earlier tonight, a signal vanished at an airfield in Lipetsk. It was one data point in a graph that has been trending in one direction for months. This is the new face of warfare for a technologically adept defender. When you cannot win in the sky, you attack the ground where the sky threat is born. You hunt the archers in their sleep. The extinction may not be total, but the erosion is real. Every burned-out Su-24, every scarred submarine, every shaken pilot is a testament to a strategy born of necessity and executed with chilling precision. The question for 2026 is no longer if Ukraine can strike deep, but whether this campaign of targeted annihilation can reach a critical mass that fundamentally alters Russia's ability to wage an aerial war of attrition. This is not just Ukraine's fight. It's a live laboratory of modern conflict, and understanding it is crucial. If this deep dive into the strategy, the data, and the high-stakes gamble has changed your perspective on the war, then do this for us. Smash that like button. It takes less than a second, but it fuels this channel more than you know. It tells YouTube this is essential analysis that needs to be seen. Then, subscribe and ring the notification bell. We are here to cut through the noise, to analyze, not agitate. Your subscription is your vote for this kind of content. It's what keeps us on mission, digging deeper than the headlines. The next adaptation, the next shocking strike, could happen any moment. Don't miss the breakdown. Be part of the informed. See you on the next one.